You all right, mate?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, cheers.
Good, good.
How's it going? Whereabouts are you in London?
Yeah, Staines, just outside London.
Okay.
And also, just so you know, if I start gazing, the screen on my laptop's packed up. So I've got the camera on here. I'm looking at you behind. I'm going to try and remember to look at this.
All right, mate. Yeah, no worries. Um, yeah, is that where you grew up type thing, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Have you always been there, or did you go into London for a bit?
A little bit. I mean, I sort of grew up around here, and then I went to uh, college in, actually, it was just down the road in Kingston. And then for a little bit, I went into town, but it was weird actually. I spent my kind of whole life wanting to get the hell out of here. Um, and when things finally sort of took off with the band, it was kind of quite nice to be able to come back, see some old friends. My neighbour would put a pint of milk in the fridge for me when I got home from being on tour, and so it was kind of strange. Sort of ended up still here, really. And it's kind of still it's pretty easy to get into town. It's a lot easier when you've got some cash. When you're skint, it's a nightmare. But so yeah, so I'm still kind of floating around, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was reading, you had a band before Hi-Fi that got, a fair bit of traction and stuff. Is it
Yeah.
Parachute or Contempo? Like, what was the lead into that band?
Yeah, so that Parachute and Contempo were basically the same band. I think we were about to put a single out. There was this there was a venue called the Camden Falcon, which is actually where um, Contempo kind of got discovered. But prior to that, they had this thing called a singles club, and they'd put like a single out every month. And they'd put you in a studio and they'd make a 7 inch. And we managed to get one of the months for that. And it was about to we were called Parachute, and we were about to do it. And then another Parachute popped up and put a record out. So we had to quickly think of a different name. And we were sort of trying to think of we had this sort of Northern Soul angle. That was sort of the influence, but it was sort of done with a sort of more of a punk sensibility, I suppose. And so we were just trying to think of things like that. And obviously thinking about, bands that got their name from record labels like Verve or whatever. And so we found another record label called Contempo, so we went with that. And then later on discovered it was also a brand of rubber johnnies. So might not have been the best. But yeah, so we did this singles club with them, and we did this sort of like launch for it, and we were second on, I think. And there was a A&R guy who was coming to see the band. I think he was there to see the band before us, but it was pissing down with rain, so he stayed and he saw us. And then we signed to London Records. This was like right at the end of probably 1998. And then the first thing we did a single with Mick Jones of The Clash, which was like a mega, and he'd come down to our rehearsal room. I remember actually he came to a gig we had in Staines in the town hall. He came down with Wendy James from Transvision Vamp, and obviously this blew everyone's minds. It's like, um, so yeah, so we did a single with him, which was really cool, and then we did an album. And while that was going on, uh, did the album with Mick Jones. Mick was producing, and they got in Gary Langan, who was basically one of the Art of Noise guys, was sort of engineering, and they were very two different personalities. Gary would turn up at 10 o'clock sharp with a you know crate of Fosters. Mick would turn up around 3 or 4 with a big bag of weed. So they were just totally different kind of. But that was kind of really interesting. But essentially, London Records got bought, and our A&R guys got laid off, and it kind of ground to a halt, really. But it's a good learning curve. And the other thing was that it was like 1999, 2000. Everything was French house or kind of alt folk, kind of cheering breaks, all that kind of stuff, and nobody was kind of into what we were doing. So it was just completely the wrong time. And as I say, like the label sort of disappeared really, and we were suddenly kind of cast adrift, trying to figure out what to do next.
Okay, so how did that kind of go from that and turn into hard fight type thing?
So we were like, I mean, so that band was like was me and my brother and like my best mate and a friend I went to college with, friend from uni, and and it sort of got to the point, when a thing goes tits up and you kind of haven't got any money, you'll start falling out. So he just kind of got to the point where, all right, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I'm sitting there, having arguments with my best mate and my brother. It was just not a particularly happy place to be. So, so we kind of knocked it on the head. And there was a couple of songs that I'd sort of written towards the end of that. So like, I think "Living for the Weekend" and "Unnecessary Trouble" we'd played them as kind of contempo songs. And then the guy who had signed, the sort of scout who had seen us at the Camden Falcon, he was trying to set up his own thing because obviously he didn't have a job anymore. And he was setting up this new label that became Necessary Records that put out the first Hardfire mini album, and then he did a deal with Atlantic, and that's how it all came out for that. So it's just me and him really, I think Steve, the drummer. I met him. I was living in Kingston at the time. I met him. He might have played a couple of gigs for Contempo, last couple of gigs, and I just started writing some more songs and trying to update the sound a little bit. Um, my dad died at that. It was like 2001 when Dad died, so it was a bit of a kind of like a not particularly you know happy time, but yeah, just kept doing it. I didn't have anything else to do. I just sort of was at home, kind of in my room, just listening to music and trying to come up with tunes, and eventually got these demos together. Um, and then it was like, okay, well, let's see if we can do some gigs. And then it was like, right, we need to find a band, and it was just really, really hard. Putting out like did all the usual things, putting the ads in like NME and Melody Maker, and we had a few people turn up. One guy turned up. He's a really lovely guy. He's a French guy, and he was like, of just starting out. So I said, well, why don't I just send you the tapes and you see how you get on, and if you think you can handle it, come to rehearsal. So he comes to the rehearsal, and it's literally like, I go, okay, let's try "Living for the Weekend," which is quite difficult to play on the bass because it was written on a keyboard. And he was like, right, okay. And so we start, and he doesn't do anything. So it's literally me going, right, it's G, that's that one there. Don't bother with the riff, just play G, 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 G. Okay, now let's that one there. And it was just like, and Steve wanted to kick him out. He was aghast, and I was like, so we gave him like half hour of showing him how to play the bass. Another guy who turned up, he just wanted to play heavy metal solos, over everything. Someone got in touch with me saying, I'm quite interested, but all the songs are rubbish. I want to rewrite all the songs. And it's just like that. It's just like, God, this is a nightmare. And it literally ended up Kai sitting there thinking, what am I going to do? And I just remembered that I used to do like a little DJ night in Staines every Thursday, and Kai had come down one night and he mentioned he played bass, and I thought, oh, that guy, I wonder what he's up to, and managed to track him down, and he turned up and just nailed "Living for the Weekend" bass line on the BV straight away. And I was like, thank God for that. So then we're looking for a guitarist, and literally again just couldn't find anyone. And a friend of mine from school was like, oh, my brother plays guitar, and I was like, yeah, I know what that's going to be like. Everyone's brother plays guitar. And then Ross turned up, and he was like really young, a little bit, kind of shy, but he was great. And so we just started doing some gigs. The same time I was going down the pub again in Staines, and I'd often see there's a guy called Wolsey White who basically he was just known around town as he'd been in a band called Supermodel, um, and had their record played on Radio One and stuff like this. So kind of a real kind of scuzzy, grungy sort of outfit. And I got chatting to him, and I said, we had just lost his dad, so we got drunk together, sort of talking about that. And he said, "Oh, let me have a go at mixing one of the tunes." So he did "Got a Reason," and he just made it sound like wow, made it sound like a proper record. And then we got in and made the rest of the record. Put a mini album out of about 7 of the tracks and a couple of mixes from a friend of ours who was like, did all that sort of stuff. And no one gave a shit. Literally couldn't get arrested. No one ever. And so that was pretty disappointing, and it had on there, I think Hardships was on there, "Living for the Weekend" was on there, it was like, but somehow it kind of like, I don't know what happened, but no one was interested. we were doing this tour and we were playing, supporting this band from the States. God, I forgot what they were called. They were really good actually, almost like an AC/DC-esque thing. Um, and then somehow it got out to someone in America. And then we heard this thing that, Rick Rubin had heard it and thought it was the best thing out all year. And we were like, well, Rick Rubin, he's like a complete hero to us because we were always into, this whole kind of the rock side, but also the hip hop and dance side of stuff as well. And then people from the UK were getting calls, the labels were getting calls from the States going, have you been checking out this band? And they're like, yeah, nah, they just sound a bit like The Clash. And they were like going, yeah, exactly. Why aren't you checking them out? And suddenly we do a gig. It was at the Water Rats in Grazing Road, and everyone's there. It was just kind of mad. You sort of go from fuck all to everyone needs to sign you. And it's just kind of crazy what made that change. They'd all heard the music, but it's just enough people talking about it and things flip, So, and I think we were, like I mentioned earlier, like, when we were trying to get Contempo out and everyone was into French house and alt folk, suddenly we're coming out, but there's also, you've seen at that point, by then you've had the Strokes, you've had Libertines, Franz Ferdinand, and suddenly we're coming out with, same time as Kaiser Chiefs, Kasabian, Maximo Park, Future Heads, and there's just loads of bands. And, we were just kind of got caught that wave. So it was like really, really fortunate for us, I think, to be just, sometimes I guess things work for a reason. And yeah, it kind of works out all right in the end.
Yeah, yeah. And like, had that experience with your previous band helped you a bit in that sense when it came to like, was like a bidding war or whatever with that attention? Did you have a bit of experience to fall back on type thing?
Um, I don't, not necessarily, because the previous band, there was only one label that was interested. It wasn't like we were suddenly really hot. Um, and then it did kind of give us, I mean, there's always this thing now, it's really quite rare it was really hard to get a record deal. To get two was almost like an impossibility, right? So when we came to get another one, and I was quite into the idea of not having anything to do with another record label after our experience of the last one, really. And we managed to make the record by ourselves. We made it on a laptop in an old taxi office that we rented, because it was cheaper. Literally, it was cheaper to rent that than have like an hour's a rehearsal room for a couple of times a week. And it was down the corner, not having to travel up to Axon and in the rush hour or whatever. So we made it ourselves. We think, well, we don't really need a label. What do we want these people for? And then, but you do, actually, the thing about seeing everyone is the one thing about, we signed to Atlantic, which was part of Warner Brothers, but they were sort of separate. And the guy at Atlantic who signed us was the one guy early on who had sort of come to see us, listen to the stuff, and kind of was like, expressed an interest. Didn't do much about it at the time, but expressed an interest. So, and then at the same time as well, you had this guy called like Max Lisada, who was the MD there, who ended up becoming king of the world at Warner's, but he was desperate to make his name. So it's always good to go in somewhere where there's people who are very ambitious because they want to make sure things happen. So it was, I think, in the end, we were always pretty sure that's where we wanted to go, but you do end up, obviously you want to talk to everyone, and it's just when people sort of just come in at the last minute and they tell you they love you, and you're like, yeah, it doesn't, that if anything goes wrong, that'll be it. You'll be out the door. So yeah, I don't know if it gave us any. Did it help us out? Not probably not.
Did it make you a bit more cynical about kind of, like you say, people lavishing praise on you, whatever?
Yeah, probably. But I think also, and the other thing that the previous experience did, that was good and bad, was that it made us kind of like, particularly, so Steve, the drummer as well, he'd been in a similar situation in another band, or I think he'd been playing for a band and they got signed and they gave him the boot. It makes you kind of like realize you don't want to mess up. So in some ways we were like trying to be ultra on it, not give anyone an excuse to say no. We'll make sure everything we did as good as we could, and we were like on everything, and But the flip side of that was I think we piled a lot of pressure on ourselves that we possibly didn't need to do. You know, we needed to have a little, because it got to the point where, like, if I look back now, I sort of think, well, it would have been nice to kind of just look round occasionally and gone, you know, bloody hell, we've done this. I mean, just I think you should always try and celebrate the little wins you get in life, and we sort of did that a bit. But we got the record deal. The main thing with the record deal was that if we sold 60,000, so if the record album went silver, which was 60,000 copies sold, they had to make another one contractually. So we just wanted to get to 60 so we could make another one. So that sort of came and went, and we were just so busy doing stuff that those little moments we didn't really kind of stop and go, wow. I mean, even when the album went to number one, which was like, 6 months after it came out, we were on tour in the States. They had a party back in the UK, but we were in some, back end of nowhere out in New York State. And I just remember we had a pathetic little champagne. When you get all the glasses all piled up and you pour, we had like 4 glasses. And it's just like, this is shit. This is shit. Why are we even bothering? And it was just sort of like, we didn't kind of, sometimes you've got to just stop and look around and kind of enjoy the scenery and enjoy the ride. And I think we sometimes were too busy thinking about, right, what's up next? Can't mess this up. So yeah.
No, it's interesting. Quite a few bands have said that. Kind
Yeah.
of something that they change to try and enjoy it a bit more. But
Yeah.
in terms of songwriting, then like were you quite prolific at that point? Like when you say you're putting pressure on yourselves, how would you write songs? Has it always stayed the same type of thing?
Pretty much. I don't know if I've ever been really prolific because I sometimes tend to. So, for instance, like the songs on Stars of CCTV, I mean, some of them just came out like Cash Machine was pretty much, you know, came out in one shot. But like Hard to Beat was started off with one tune where there was a lot of the lyrics that are in the verse of Hard to Beat was in this other song, completely different. And then I think I was probably listening to Fatboy Slim, and I think he sampled a cover of The Who. So it wasn't The Who, but it was a cover. So I quite like the guitar sound. So I was doing something with that and came up with the Hard to Beat guitar riff. And then these words will fit over that. So suddenly that's that. And had the riff and the bass line. So all that's there and the lyrics. But it had about 8 choruses. I just couldn't find a chorus that kind of made it do what it needed to do. And and the guy who was Warren, who set up Necessary Records, I would send him stuff and say, no, it's not quite there yet. I'm like, for fuck's sakes. And I was, and it took me a while to find the chorus. And similarly with Tied Up Too Tight, it was like, so there'll always be this sort of incremental bits occasion with these sorts of stuff sometimes. So I was always, maybe not writing, but producing bits or trying different ways of taking tunes, Move On Now started off as a groove and ended up trying it out on the piano and that worked, so trying different ways of approaches of doing stuff. And I think I still kind of do that. There was definitely a point, second album though, where your first record is you're just kind of like writing songs and you don't necessarily expect anything to happen with them. And then suddenly you're really super busy and you've got to knock up a second one that ideally needs to be bigger than the first one. And I remember that being, it wasn't so much the songwriting, it was like going, right, here's this track, and we were in the studio and we took our little cab office studio and the unit next door was free, so we rented that one. We moved into that and we spent the whole time we should have been doing like pre-production and stuff building the studio. To this day I don't know why we just didn't get a bunch of lads in to build it, but like Ballsy the producer ended up doing it. It was just mad and it all took ages, but we were in there and it was like, because you're sort of sitting there going, okay, how's this, and you'd play it to like the A&R guy and he'd be like play it to the manager, he'd be like, I don't know. So like you start overthinking everything and you start putting stuff on, trying to make it work because you know it should work, but everyone's kind of like got all this pressure on them that they don't. No one knows if it's going to work or not. And I think sometimes you end up if you don't always, I'm still a lot of the tracks on there I like, but it wasn't a particularly pleasant experience. We were like doing 7 days a week, and we just lived off microwave meals. I mean, our salt intake was must have been through the roof. It was just like just trying to get everything finished. And I mean, there were some incredible experiences. Like when we went to Olympic Studios and recorded a string section and all this kind of stuff, which was amazing for me. It was really cool. But also, it's kind of like the antithesis of what Hardfire was. The string section should have been a cheap sampler. That was what it was always was before, right? So suddenly, but we just couldn't resist. Do you want some real strings? Do you want Will Malone, who did all those incredible arrangements for what did he do? He did loads of stuff. Yeah, of course we do. And they spent the money, and we did it, and it sounded amazing. But it was just kind of you just get sucked into that, and then just that kind of the fear of like going, is this good enough? Is it going to work? I don't know. And then the record comes out, and and in that period of Stars to Once Upon a Time in the West, the everyone had got broadband downloads, and record sales had fallen off the edge of a cliff. It was just a completely different world when we came back with that one in the space of like 7 months. It was mad.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I read that you turned down Abbey Road at one point. Is that true? Recording there?
I think there was a kind of where do you want to record after the second album, and there was talk about going to all these places, and we kind of still we like the idea of keeping our own. So I've been in a studio before, and it's kind of quite cool for the first week. With Contempo, we went into West Side Studios near Shepherd's Bush. Um, but I think that experience and the fact that it had worked within our own space, where we could just go on to whenever we liked, and could go home. We wanted to keep that, and also be sort of like use that money as an investment. We've still got the studio now. The new album, we made it there. Um, it's not ours, we pay rent, but the equipment in there is ours. So it was just, well, we could go to Abbey Road and it'd be amazing for a week, but after a while, it still becomes essentially the same thing. And you're still sitting there going, shit, we've got to get this done because this is costing X £100 a day, and everyone's starting to freak out. Um, we looked at a few places. We looked at a place near Hampton Court, this really old, sort of, I guess, Georgian, perhaps. I think Faraday had lived there. There's a blue plaque outside, and obviously he kind of invented electricity, didn't he? And so we thought that would be pretty cool. But again, that would have just been, So it's just like we keep where we are, knock through, keep it real. And we did one of the we did go to Abbey Road. We did one of the they did the Abbey Road series, I think, with Channel 4, and we did some sessions in there. It was pretty cool. It was amazing studio too. Um, but it's nice
Yeah.
to be able to just, like I say, you don't necessarily need all that stuff. You just need to. And we got an engineer come in to help us out a little bit, so it was better for that. We had what was it? So we had Spike Stent. He was like supposed to be the executive producer, and we just rented the place next door, and we're about to start building. And upstairs, this electronic gate company moved in, and all you could hear through the floor was like, and they'd put them on test like all day long and all night long. And we were thinking, we fucked this up now. We've just taken the lease out on this bit, and all you can hear is these machines upstairs. And Spike came in and said, Spike, what are we going to do? And he was like, I think it sounds amazing. Okay. In the end, we managed to get around it, but yeah, we still got, as I say, still got it, but we sort of trimmed the space down a bit because we didn't need all that space anymore. And when the rent's not that bad, but when you're not earning any money, it suddenly becomes pretty dicey. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And all right in thinking you basically you produce your albums with the help of other people, basically. Is that right?
yeah. Well, so this guy I mentioned that I bumped into in the pub, Wolsey, he's kind of worked with us. He's become a good friend, and he's worked with us ever since. And him and I produced the first one, and pretty much the second one. Third one was a bit. We actually went to LA and worked with Greg Kirsten on a track, and Stuart Price did a couple of tracks, which is cool. And the others were done between Wolsey and this guy called Andy Gray, who used to just done a lot of stuff with Depeche Mode and that kind of thing. And this new album has been Wolsey's mostly mixed it, and I produced it. But we sort of like it. Kind of we sort of both do a bit of each. I really value his opinion on the production side of stuff, and when he'll be mixing it, I'll come in and do some changes, and he'll come in. And we worked together on this other thing called Offworld, which was, he was in it more as an artist, and that was really cool. We'd kind of worked really well together. When you're sort of stuck, he'll say something that will go, oh yeah, that's an idea, and we'll quickly kind of bounce off each other to get to different places. So he's been pretty almost like a unofficial fifth member since the beginning, really. And he's just he's one of those guys who's good to be around. He's like a really engaging, funny, bananas sometimes bloke. So yeah, it's good to have him in the room. He's good at geeing everyone up and drinking all your beer.
And with like the record label Happy, those first two albums, did they give you that control to pick, who you want to work with and how you want to work type of thing?
Yeah, I have to say they were pretty on that side of things. We were pretty lucky. Um, they were obviously after the first one when that went well, we could probably kind of do what we wanted, because how could they turn around and say, well, you did it this way and it went well. We don't trust you to do it again. Um, Third one, there was a bit of a, well, let's try some other stuff, which was cool. I'm not against that. Hence went and went out to work with Greg, tried writing some numbers with a couple of other people, see how that worked, because it'd always been me by myself previously. Um, but they were still kind of like, it's still sort of what we wanted to do. Um, there was a few things like, they were really worried about Killer Sounds being the album title. They thought we were going to get torn to pieces because of it. Um, but but yeah, in that respect, they were pretty good. Um, it was just some of the kind of, some of the other bits and pieces that were sort of like, you sometimes were made to feel if, when anything goes right, it's often because of them, and when anything goes wrong, it's because of you. Um, that's generally the sort of vibe or the feeling I got anyway. Maybe I was just paranoid.
What did anything go wrong that stands out and that they blamed you for?
Well, it's just things like, like I don't know if the TV performance, the TV performance. Oh, your voice was a bit rough in that TV performance. Well, yeah, because we've just been doing 6 nights a week for the last, 3 months. And every time I've got a day off, you fly me off somewhere to do some promo. It's like, what do you expect? Um, I remember one time we were out in the States and they wanted to shoot another video for Hard to Beat for the American market. And we were like, we'd been touring, and it was always super busy over there. And they were like, right, we've got this video. I said, look, could you find somewhere where I could get my hair cut? We've got the video, I need a haircut. And apparently I was a prima donna for asking them to find me someone to get my hair cut before the video shoot that they were paying thousands of pounds for. It was just like, yeah, I don't know. Anyway.
No, it's interesting. I was talking to Chris from Boy Kill Boy. I think they went on Top of the Pops, and I think the record label said, you looked like you were enjoying yourself too much. You look too nice. It's just interesting what people come up with, isn't it? I don't
Yeah.
know.
My half brother, I didn't actually know he existed till I was about 13. And
I had that
then I didn't,
situation weirdly.
yeah. And back in the day, I didn't really get to know him until my dad passed away, but he was in the music business. He used to he set up his own company with someone, and he knew loads of people, and he told me a story about how Like when one of the David Bowie albums didn't go well, they blamed it on the trousers he wore in the video.
Excellent. Um, yeah, I found out I had half sister through ancestry.com, but I guess yours was a bit earlier than that, was it?
Oh wow, yeah, no, yeah. That is a have you spoken since? Have you
Yeah,
met at all?
just half sister lives in Bali, but yeah, my dad passed away when I was younger, so it's it's a bit of a mad thing. Like we didn't realize it's because my dad was adopted as well. I assumed it's something to do with that, but it turns out he'd basically had a secret kid. But yeah,
Yeah,
madness. Maybe that's a different podcast anyway.
yeah. Well, I know there's a story that my so the reason my dad split up with my half brother's mum was because he was carrying on with someone else, and there's a rumor that she had a kid and he was adopted. Now, no one's popped up yet on Ancestry, but it's probably only a matter of time before that comes around, I imagine. But yeah,
No, it's
did you
mad
see
what your
that? I
dad
mean,
can
I'm
come
sort of going
across.
a bit off topic, but there was that Netflix show about these people who like started doing Ancestry, and they discovered that the fertility doctor that they were using
Yeah.
had basically used his own jizz for, for everyone. And all these people coming up as like, half sisters and brothers and stuff. And it was just, anyway, sorry, I digress.
No, I did hear about that. I need to watch that. Sounds yeah, sounds mental. But yeah, listening to the music again today, and Tied It Too Tight's definitely probably my favorite off the first album. But just interested in some of the lyrics like "Cognoscenti don't like us."
Yeah.
What's that referring to?
Um, so there was this sort of feeling, part of the angle was that we were felt like we were sort of on the outside, like looking in at this, when you had the whole Britpop thing, and suddenly you had sort of they used to feel like sort of like the indie scene was kind of your thing, and you were part of it, and suddenly it wasn't anymore. It's been taken away from you and was now the mainstream, and you sort of like felt a little bit put out by that, but also a little bit, oh, quite like a bit of that action as well. And so it always felt like, even like, especially like where we were in like Staines, it's like a satellite town of London. You were always on the outside. You couldn't really, you were never invited. And there was that sort of like, again, from the experiences we'd had with Contempo, where you would get a few kind of snotty middle class journalists slag you off. That was that kind of feeling, like, you're not, and that was the cognoscenti really was the sort of like the kind of, people with their martinis looking down their noses at you while you're trying to, come up with something. And it was just like, and I think it was because we had in Contempo, we had a trumpet player as a Millwall fan who used to wear a Millwall "Nobody likes us, we don't care" t-shirt. I think that's where that line came from. But I had to spend, there was a lot of discussion about how to pronounce cognoscenti.
Yeah, can't say I'm familiar with it really.
No, I mean, it was like, and I always thought it would be like cognac. Well, that's got a G in, isn't it? Right. So I thought it was cognoscenti. And to this day, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, that was kind of
Yeah, and then when you got like someone like Mark Beaumont who comes into bat for you, who really likes you, obviously prolific writer at NME. Like how big an impact does that have?
I mean, it was massive for us. He'd been like him and John Earls as well, who previously used to be the guy who sort of did the reviews for Teletext. They'd kind of been fans of Contempo, and we'd done articles with Mark. I think it was for Melody Maker and stuff like that. Um, but he just got it, and you don't need the whole of the enemy to love you. You just need a couple of people to be on your side, and we were lucky that Mark was that guy, and he told us actually, he said I gave the album 10 out of 10, but they wouldn't let me have it.
Oh,
They
really?
said you obviously can only have 9.
Wonder if that was Connor's decision then, Connor McNicholas.
Yeah, possibly, possibly.
Because I
It's
saw
like
you had
that.
a bit of a back and forth with him on Instagram because there was this thing. I think you did an interview with Luke Pritchard of the Kooks.
Yeah,
Maybe where he said like, NME could be a bit fickle, maybe or something. Was
yeah,
that kind of the gist of it?
yeah. He was sort of saying, and I understood where he's coming from. He was saying, how he was sort of saying how they supported us, and I think he remembered it different to how I remembered it because they never gave us a front page. They were always suspicious of us. Mark was the only guy there who really, went into bat for us. Um, they did, they invited us to the NME Awards, but it was only ever to like, sort of show up. We never got nominated for any awards, nothing like that. Um, and some of the reviews were like, very a little bit condescending, and like the headline for our first live review was "Chav that," so it was like, okay, well, that's where we're going with this, is it? We're sort of like these oiks that, and then the first review we did, the first review they did post stars. I mean, the guy was just, I found it recently, I stumbled across it. The guy was just a complete cunt. I mean, he was sort of being genuinely rude about Kai, like for no reason. And also saying that all the people who were there to see us weren't people who normally went to gigs. They're all out of towners who'd come in. And it's like, who the fuck are you to judge who should rightfully be at a gig and who isn't? Like, how do you know if these people aren't every other week? Loads of my friends from around here are massive music fans and they are hardcore and they're into it. But he just assumes that if you're not sort of living in Camden, you weren't serious. And it was just all that sort of shit. And that's why when he was sort of sitting there, sort of saying, oh, we did all this for him. I was like, well, you didn't really, yeah. And the point was trying to make was that despite all that, and they did, if it wouldn't, you really miss the enemy now, because if you had that one guy like Mark Beaumont batting for you, you stood a chance. And there's so much stuff at the moment now; it's very hard to cut through. But with that was like a kind of a focal point for everything. So I was saying that my point was that even though the enemy could be fickle, I'd still much rather have it around in it, in the form it used to be, and being an important publication than not. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think he took my point. I wasn't going to sort of, we met him a few times. He was always a nice guy, but it was just like, well, you certainly didn't back us as much as you did some of the darlings. Um, but that's the way it goes. We were lucky Mark was there.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, no, even in Matt Beaumont's review of the album, there is a lot of like working class cliches. I think he calls it. I think he calls you Generation Asper or something. It seems to be a bit of an obsession with Asper's at that point. But
Yeah.
did you ever get tired of that? Like, did you ever feel like I don't know really? Was it a bit
I
strange, or
mean,
did it?
at the time, I think we just took anything we could get, really. But I do remember someone sort of like, I don't know where I saw it, but someone said, "Oh yeah, I reckon they're the sort of band that would beat me up." And I was like, we were the people that used to get beaten up, when you would go out and we would be dressed in a certain way. We were the ones who get beaten up because we weren't looking like we were all going down the Friday night house club or whatever. Like, so it was sort of like, where are you getting that from? This sort of this idea that we were somehow, because we weren't, or whatever, I don't know what, we were going to be going around roughing people up, and like it was like this sort of like some of the stuff they describe as, the smell of curry sauce on kebabs and shit like this, and it's like, you've just got no idea. It's just like it's almost like, if you sort of have that working class background, you either have to transcend it and become so big that it like Oasis that no one can touch you, or you become like a cartoon kind of like, Geezer type.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you just, it's like can't comprehend, you know, can't get it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, to be honest,
That's
as I say, at the end of the day, we took whatever we could get because you're just desperate for some kind of oxygen. So, um, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And you've played on some NME tours and stuff. Like, did you feel part of the scene with those bands, or not really, type thing?
Um, Not really, but that could have been down to us, you know. There was always that thing. I remember we did some show with Art Brute. It was a tiny show in tiny little pub, and they were like they were so arrogant. I was like, "What's the matter with you, man? Who the hell do you think you are?" We're playing the Buffalo Bar. It holds about 50 people. So all that sort of. But a lot of the bands, they were probably all thinking the same thing, just trying to do their thing, just trying to, whenever we'd actually catch up with people, they were generally really cool because everyone's quite similar, like all the generally whenever we did a lot of early dates with Kaiser Chiefs, they were all really nice and really laid back. Same with the Future Heads guys and Subways, all those sort of people we were going out with at the time. Um, Everyone was kind of chilled out, but just sort of focused on doing their thing. There wasn't like a big kind of like it's like everyone talks about the scene, but when you're actually out on tour, you're just out on tour. There was no kind of big, good mixer pub to be all hanging out at or anything like that. It was just, we were in Staines doing our thing, and then when it happened, we were on tour, and maybe you'd cross like ships in the night. It was mainly at festivals where you'd bump into other bands. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah,
And I saw early on you got a chance to play like a mega gig at the Milton Keynes Bar with Green Day in front of like
yeah,
65,000 people or something.
yeah.
What was that
Shit
like?
myself. So we've been playing to like 200 people maybe, and that sort of, sort of little backroom clubby type places. And I think Simple Plan were booked to play it, and they apparently, when they couldn't do it, they recommended us. So thank you, Simple Plan. And we did since meet them, and they were really lovely. Um, so we got on. We were first on, and had we'd been booked in to do like one of those Chifa on the beach things, and you had to do it. You basically the whole thing, right? Is you're constantly trying to keep people sweet. So you're trying to keep radio sweet. You're trying to keep the TV sweet. So you've got to do Tifa on the beach because you want to get all the other stuff that Pop World and all that sort of stuff I used to do. So we had to do it, but then we got this thing. So we spent the entire fee on a helicopter to get us from Weston-super-Mare to Milton Keynes. And I was imagining it was going to be some kind of, fairly fancy, but it was these two helicopters that they in the week they'd used to check the electricity pylons. They fly along the electricity pylons to see if everything's all right. So it was two of those really rickety things. But we flew over, got in it, and flew over to Milton Keynes. I think everyone thought it was Green Day coming in the thing, but it was us. Green Day had a tour bus, and the back opened up, and a little smart car came out. I'll never forget going, fucking hell, that's James Bond shit. When we get one of those, they had a tour bus each, and one with the car. But we went out there and we sort of like did our sound check, which was mad because we'd never played in, somewhere without a roof. So everything sounds completely different, right? And then I remember coming out and there were signs everywhere like pyro, 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 no smoking. And Ross walks out of his fag on and immediately gets bundled by loads of roadies. And then it was 2 days. First day you come out and you kind of like can't quite comprehend how many people there are just to see. You sort of see these people and you realise that's just the bit in front of the stage, and then beyond that there's this sea of like just humanity, and absolutely terrifying. Couldn't really hear anything. Everything sounded completely different. Couldn't hear the band. Did it. Seemed to go well. Came out the next day. Did it again. Bit more. Had it together that time. But that was massive for us. The amount of people who came up to us since and said, I first saw you at Green Day. So that was a really fortunate opportunity.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it was cool. Really cool.
And like in terms of playing abroad, like is there any way you've gone down particularly well? You played America a lot and stuff.
Yeah. I think, I love one of the things I really liked doing was going and playing abroad because I just liked traveling, even though a lot of it you don't often see much. But so America went pretty well. America, we did the whole classic UK band thing in America where we could play to 1,000, 1,500 people in New York and San Francisco and maybe LA, and then you'd be playing to like 100 people in Ohio or somewhere like that. Um, and again, I think we sort of I sort of regret we sort of like overlooked Europe because basically it blew up and the record label went right. Europe they call it an international priority, which means every region has to release the record and promote you, and so they all wanted you to come over. And the guys in America were really into it because, like, if you remember, they were the ones who'd come around the first time.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was like, look, America are really into it. If you go in America, everywhere else takes care of itself. So let's go to America and spend some time there. And we went to America, spent time there, and spent a lot of money, um, you know, on, just thinking about, you're paying we took our UK crew with us. And at that point, it was $2 to the pound. So if we'd have got a US crew, it would have been half price. So we just spunked loads of money going around America, and did some good decent shows in Europe. And I loved Germany. I loved playing Germany. I didn't know what to expect from Germany. I'd never thought of ever going there on holiday or anything. But it was really cool. People were really cool. Cities were really cool. Loved it. But one of the places that was really great was Japan. That was really good. Tokyo, Osaka. Several times we went out there, and they were really just because you're so off your head on jet lag, and then it's so different, and it's so intense. You'd do a show, and the fans would then be waiting for you outside, and they'd be at your hotel before you got back there. It was just crazy, like minor Beatlemania-esque for the first couple of times we went out there. That was pretty cool. And then just going around and seeing all these incredible places, eating all this really nice food, and buying loads of cheap guitars, and it's just like dream world. Yeah.
Yeah, quality, yeah. And then like getting nominated for some pretty mad stuff like Brit Awards very
Yeah.
like early on. Um, like you say, can you appreciate that at the time, or was it just like a bit of a whirlwind?
I think when we so it was a bit of a whirlwind. I mean, we got nominated for the Mercuries and the Brits, and I've since discovered that the Mercury Awards. So this is a bit of a long story. I'll try and keep it brief, but Wolsey, our sort of long-term collaborator, his stepmom passed away, and they had a celebrant at the service, and it transpired that this celebrant in his previous life had been a judge on the Mercury Music Prize in the year
Right.
that we were nominated. So we were talking to him about it, and he was saying, "Oh yeah, it was down to uh, went down to basically you guys was one vote between it, and as it turns out, because I know someone told me later, this guy, he didn't tell us this. He said, yeah, it's down to you. But they eventually went with Anthony and the Johnsons. And this friend of mine said, yeah, they voted for Anthony Johnson. They said, well, we can't have Hardfire win it. So they voted for Anthony Johnson. So we were close to winning that. But again, a little bit of music journo snobbishness kept us out of that one. And then the Brits, we knew that was the mad thing about the Brits. Is like we were up for best band and best album, and it's like we're not gonna win that. And Arctic Monkeys had come along, so we just got shit faced basically and watched Prince. And had a big fight at the end of it as well, if I recall. Great days.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you played with some, massive names. Um, what was that like playing with the heroes like, Mick Jones, Paul
Mm.
Weller, all that? Bit
Yeah, I mean
surreal.
it was a real highlight. We did that, so we did those five Brixton shows, and Billy Bragg was our sort of special guest every night. He was super cool. And then Mick, obviously, I knew him from the Contempo days, but to actually get up and play with him. So the first, I think Paul again, like especially like being from Staines, Jam from Woking, it was like a real. They were like, it was a real kind of, like we felt like they were sort of our, everyone, so many bands around here sound like the Jam, right? So, um, and he came to rehearsal, and we were all sort of a bit in awe of him. And the first thing he says is, "Right, who's having tea?" And he goes and makes the tea, it's just like really lovely. And he's playing stuff. I was just like, wow, man, he's just amazing. Just, really great guitar player as well as being Paul Weller, the mod father and all that. But and then Mick turned up and we were doing a cover of E equals MC squared, but I had to change the key because it just wasn't working for my voice. And we were having he'd come to sound check and he was getting all the notes wrong, and I was like, oh fucking hell, he hasn't played this for like 25 years. And then suddenly he worked it out and he just came in and then he started doing the BVs and it was just like, fuck, this is amazing. Just shivers down your spine. Um, Really, really, really cool. I went to see he got BAD back together a few years later and they were really, really good. I was genuinely blown away by it. It was such a shame they stopped doing it. They were really good. And then we did a Love Music Hate Racism show with um, Jerry Dammers, Neville Staples, not Neville Southall. Um, that had been another show. And then we also did one of Damon's sort of Africa Express things with Rashid Tahar. I don't know if you know, he was like this Algerian rice singer. He's gone now, but he was like he turned up in this incredible suit, amazing hat, wicked shoes, and a Lazzy bag full of bottles. It was just really like a real moment.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, you mentioned Brixton, like was it 5 consecutive sold
Yeah,
out nights? I mean, that's balmy, isn't
yeah.
it?
At the time, I don't think anyone had done it on a debut. I think only about five other people had done it, and no one had done it on a debut album. I think only like previous like Prodigy, Clash, Massive Attack, and then the sixth one became available because it was Richard Ashcroft and he wasn't very well, so he was looking like he might cancel. And we're thinking, oh, we can just like put the tickets out for a fiver a go and do the six, but he got better. But that was that was really cool.
Yeah,
Thing is,
yeah.
you get like when you do that, you get catering in, right? And they to make you feel like you're getting your money's worth, they just stuff your face all day, like massive breakfast, massive lunch, dinner. So you just stuffed all the time. Probably put on pounds if you did it all the time.
Yeah, does that affect? I've seen people have like techniques with what they eat before they go on stage and stuff. Can it affect your performance?
Yeah, you only it takes you a while to work that out. You're going up on stage and you're like, oh, oh, or you just start getting really like you've had a massive pasta bake or something. You're starting to get really like. But this is the thing. I sometimes it's probably different now, but we came out and you go out there. No one tells you anything about this. You have to work it all out for yourself. There wasn't any kind of Brit school, BIM, whatever there are now. No one told you how to talk to the press. No one explained what to do on radio. No one did, you just went out there and made it up as you went along. And a lot of the time you're going, you just didn't know, you didn't have a clue. You're just talking utter bollocks, and um, you never had anyone saying, okay, guys, this is how you do it. Don't go out and, you know, or especially like in your first tour, don't go out and get on it every night because you won't make it to the end. And we were all sick as dogs by the end of it. Being on a tour bus is like being on a submarine. It's just everyone's like completely cattle trucks by the end of it. You have to work this stuff up yourself because no one, I don't know if people just think or no one thinks to tell you, or I don't know, but certainly wasn't a rule book or a course you could go on to get a little bit of a heads up. Um, and that's the thing is that you're doing that, and that's fine because as far as you're concerned, you're kind of like this independent artist, and then suddenly you're going, okay, lads, you need to be competing now. You've gone mainstream. You need to be competing with Beyonce and competing with these people. And you're thinking, oh, there's no chance. We just like literally blagged our way in, and now you want us to kind of like start. It's like saying, okay, yeah, next week we've got you on Dancing on Ice, all right? Actually, Ross used to play ice hockey, so we would have been pretty good at that. We should have done that, thinking about it. Anyway,
Yeah, people say like what's my train of thought there? What was I gonna say? Bastard.
Or a Franny with
Um,
the Dancing on Ice.
possibly, yeah. Was it? It'll come back to me. But yeah, I did want to talk about the album covers. Obviously pretty interesting. Even like driving down the motorway yesterday, saw the first album cover on the back of a lorry or something.
Yeah.
Like where did you get the idea for that type of thing?
So we had the title Stars of CCTV. In fact, at one point, I thought that that could be the name of the band. And then it was like, oh, is it a bit wordy, a bit of a mouthful? So we changed it to Hardfire, which was I had this autobiography, well, it wasn't an autobiography, a biography of Lee Scratch Perry, and that was the sound. That's how he described the sound of his studio, the Black Ark studio. He called it Hardfire. But then the amount of times we had to explain what it was like. It's like Hardfire. It's not lo-fi. It's not hi-fi. It's Hardfire. McFly? No, it's just like yeah. But anyway, so we had the song Stars of CCTV, and so when we were like thinking, well, that'd be the cool name for an album. Then if it's not going to be the name of the band, so that was in our heads. So the original mini album um, front sleeve was us standing outside our little studio as if taken by a security camera. Um, and so we had that, and then we were doing a photo shoot. Again, it was all shoestring. We got Kai's girlfriend at the time. She was a bit of a photographer, so we went to like a car park because it's band photo shoots, car parks, building sites. That's generally the idea. And we went to this car park, and we were doing the shoot, and there was a CCTV sign there. So I was like, oh, let's do one in front of that. And Warren was with us. He took a picture of it. And then when we sent all the stuff, and we sent all the stuff over to this guy called Dave Smith, who was a friend of Warren's and also was a graphic designer. He was just about to start working for Apple at that point. And it was like, oh, why don't we put this on the CD? We put the camera on the CD. That would be cool. Oh, yeah, brilliant. So we did that. And then when it came to like, okay, right, time's passed. We've done a deal with Atlantic. We've finished off the rest of the album. They want to make some vinyl. And it was someone came and says, look, why don't we take the camera and put it on the front and switch it so the picture's inside and the camera's on the front. And I'd always loved, those, like Screamadelica, graphic, simple, so I was like, yeah, brilliant. And obviously on vinyl, on 12-inch, it looks really cool. Even down to the fact we managed to get them they wanted to have the name of the band on there, but that would not look as clean, so we got them to put it on as a sticker. That was my only disappointment with the reissue, is we didn't see it until we were signing them. They'd put the name of the band on there. It was like, anyway, but yeah, so that was kind of where that one came from, really. So it's just about, just that kind of, I mean, a lot of those things about, if anyone some sort of said, well, what were your, obviously all your high points doing this sort of stuff. A lot of my favorite memories are before we got signed, was like doing those, doing the video for 300 quid by ourselves, bunking into Heathrow, doing our own photo shoot, going to, Portobello looking for clothes and all that sort of stuff. And that, that it was all very organic, really. It was like, okay, written this song about not being a star of TV and screen, like I was saying about feeling like being on the outside looking in, but there was a CCTV van in the high street one night and was like, well, we're the stars of CCTV. Wrote this song. Okay, well, that would be a great title for an album. What would the artwork be? And suddenly all those things just start falling into place. And I guess that's one of the reasons why it all worked, because it was kind of organic and fairly kind of real.
Yeah, yeah. And then with the second one, am I right in thinking there's a bit of backlash from somewhere about having essentially, a non-album cover, if you like.
Yeah, I think that you generally we had this thing where on the first album, everyone who likes the band gets to write about you, and on the second one, everyone who doesn't like it gets to slag you off. So we got basically got a bit of a kick in on the second one, and the artwork was a bit of a lightning rod for it. The original idea we had given to us by the label was like us getting out of helicopters, because they were like, right, you've done the whole gritty street thing. Now we need you to be like glossy, high gloss rock stars. So we want to get you, you know, we want stylists, we want helicopters, we want limousines, all this sort of shit. And they had like this mocked up photos of us doing all this stuff, and it was just like, man, this, you know, this doesn't feel right at all. And then Dave Smith, the guy who had worked with us on the first record, came back, and I think he'd sort of seen this thing where it was like, just said, you know, artwork or not available to the artwork, and he'd had this idea where it just would be text, it wouldn't, you know, and so the idea that started off, and then it was like, well, we could actually say things in the text, and the idea would be that it would be this whole sort of campaign that would hold together, so there'd be, you know, like billboards saying certain stuff that would tie in with all those bits and pieces, and you know, as often happens in these things, a few key elements never happened, and then it was like, okay, well, that's not quite worked as well as we'd liked it. But we liked the idea of not, you know, it was like, oh, do you just put the band on the front, and you know, just was like the idea of something a little bit not that, you know. So that's when we saw it, we were like, yeah, cool, and we loved the idea. But yeah, for some reason, it was like taken that we were trying to put graphic designers out of business, just like, yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting topic these days, isn't it, with
Yeah,
AI and stuff? But
yeah. But there's a, you know, so back in Contempo we had this, we got to make a video for one of the tracks, a track called Just Not Strong Enough. And the idea we were sort of sold for the video was that we go to this place in southeast London called the Broccoli Ballroom, which has been used in loads of videos. I think Amy Winehouse did one there, and so this is old sort of fashioned kind of like dance hall really. And the idea would be that we'd be on stage playing, and it'd be like there'd be like a dance competition, like a dance-a-thon marathon type thing, and there'd be like a clock counting up the hours, and there'd be a guy with a trophy, and the idea would be that gradually everyone collapses of exhaustion, and they'd get a few extras in, and they'd get a few dancers, so they'd get Northern Soul dancers, because we had this Northern Soul thing going on, you know, against some kind of more sort of hip hop street break dancing stuff. And by the end of it, there'd be two guys left having a dance off, and then they'd fall to the floor exhausted. And the only people left standing, you'd see the clock, we've been playing for 24 hours straight, would be us, and then we'd get the cup. And then on the day, they didn't have a clock or a cup. So the video is us playing, everyone falls asleep, and then that's it. And you're going, those two key moments, those two key things made the whole thing not make any sense. And like, how often does that happen where like, oh, we couldn't afford that little bit that's just completely messed up the whole idea, or the stuff, the reason you liked it in the first place.
then yeah, I remembered what I was going to ask you. Like in the same way you said that, you know, people wouldn't tell you about stuff that goes on or what to do. You know, people mentioned that no one is telling you not to have a beer at 11 in the morning or whatever, like that type of thing. um, like the lifestyle, is it kind of, yeah, like to find out, basically fuck around and find out, as they say,
Yeah,
with
I
that type
mean,
of thing.
yeah, it was. I mean, you find that pretty quickly, especially like, you know, for instance, I remember we were out in Japan, and you know, you'll do the show. As I say, you've got no idea where you are, and we had some friends out there, and we all went out to a restaurant afterwards, and it was really nice food, and there's this really nice beer, and then they get the sake out, and I was later talking to my friend who lives out there, and I said, you know, oh yeah, you know, the beer and the sake. He says, no, no, you don't. No one has them at the same time. It was only you lot had them at the same time. No one else drinks like that, and we were like, oh right, okay, so all this beer, all this sake, get really, and then you sort of roll into bed, and like an hour later you roll out, and then we were doing the show the next day in Osaka, and it was literally trying to sing and just I can't seem to do anything, and Ross and Kyle were just both like either side of me, and then we were fucked, and it was just like we've just fucked this show up because we all just didn't think, you know, just got carried away, got overexcited, and you know, and now we've fucked this one up, and just was gutted because, you know, you've come all this way. and it wasn't that bad, but it was, you knew, it was, when you know that you've not delivered. I remember another time as well, similar sort of thing. We were doing we went to South by Southwest, and we did we were literally went at the last minute, couldn't find a hotel anywhere in town, couldn't find we found this guy who had like a van that was, so like a, one of those, like the Scooby Doo mystery mobile type things, and he was like our TM stroke driving us around. So everything had been booked up, because we were really late in the day. So we went over there and we did a couple of gigs in the sort of backyard of some, fancy shop. And then the next day we were due to do this place out of town, and we got there and all the gear was rubbish. There was no one there. I'm thinking this is going to be a nightmare. And then people came in. There was loads of people from the American label, and it rocked, and it was amazing. So we were all like really fired up. This is great. Go back into town, nailing margaritas all night, hooking up, hey, seeing loads of people from the UK there. Forgetting that the next day we were going to be on MTV live, the one that actually mattered. So come MTV, obviously I was completely wrecked. Couldn't again. Just yeah. No
Bits
one
on the
said,
Cooper.
Rich, you got a show tomorrow. Save it until tomorrow night.
Yeah, yeah. And then, you obviously went through a lot of stuff in 2005. Did that affect the songwriting for the next album in terms of being a bit more personal?
I think definitely, yeah. I mean, and again, it was one of those things where it probably again let it get a bit too much, because you take things more personally, like so. My mum passed away. That was a kind of a shock, and we were at Glastonbury actually. We were at Glastonbury, first time at Glastonbury. We were due on about 3 in the afternoon, and we got bumped up to 7, because obviously our profile had been up. And then I got a call from my brother saying, my mum had basically gone in for a kidney transplant and it had gone wrong. So, and I don't remember. I can't even now. I don't I don't remember really for the next month anything what happened after that. Obviously, we were still doing stuff. We were back out about about a week later, maybe 2 weeks. Um, but so so you're kind of like going, right. Well, I'm in this situation now. My mum and my dad were always really, really supported me. Sort of believed that this was an option, that they could make this happen. And sort of like, which is, when you've got that, it helps. Someone's got your back. And so we were making a second album. It was really hard work. Songwriting is, and you start feeling this is all this is kind of, in some ways, this is my mum and dad's legacy. It's almost like a tribute to them. So you do it, and then you get it out there, and people start slagging you off, and you just take it personally because of that. And then you're kind of like, well, fuck you, and you sort of like, and then it's, things stop becoming fun. Um, so yeah, it was quite hard, and we that in fact the next few, so we did that, that album came out September 2007. 2008 we were in the States, and we're just on our way home, and Warren was the guy who signed Contempo to London Records, and when that went south, set up his own label, which then we put the mini album out on, and when he licensed it to Atlantic, he became our manager. And we're out in the States, and he gets a call saying his brother is drowned on a stag do. So obviously that's, so like really the whole, one of the reasons, nothing much happened between 2008 and 2011 was that he was dealing with that. I was dealing with all sorts of other stuff. Um, and no one really wanted to be, getting back out there and, putting up with bullshit. So, yeah, it was quite difficult that period. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, how would you deal with that? Like, obviously, with the band going on that rise and you having that to deal with, was like at that time, did you feel you were getting offered the help you needed, or were you just kind of just, I don't
Um,
know, just going along with things?
yeah, just just go. It was definitely just go along with things. I don't think anyone ever said you know it was just about And I promise you, I would have probably I didn't know any better, so I would have just gone, no, no, everything's fine. Now I know that it'd have been much better to have you know spoken to someone about all this. But it was just like, no, we've got this opportunity. We can't mess it up. We haven't got time. We can't stop. And it was, it could have been the right thing. So if I'd have sat down and been able to speak to my mum or my dad, they'd have said, "Of course you got to keep going. Don't be daft." So you had that in your head, but it is looking back, it was like, I don't know if we could have done anything differently, but um, definitely, I think sometimes when you start, all that stuff starts weighing you down. You don't always make the best decisions, and you're not always, you're not going to be feeling creative and excited about stuff, and you've got to be feeling kind of joyful and kind of just really into it to be coming up with good stuff. And you're not, and that's really hard when you're, you know, just not feeling like it. Um, and that's probably why there was a bit of quite a gap between second and third album, which by that time again, the whole world had changed completely again. It's kind of crazy because when you actually sort of think about the last 20 years, there hasn't been the sort of genre shifts like you might have seen in the 80s or the 70s, where you've got like all these major genres happening in one after the other. You think about the 80s and synth pop, goth, you know, uh, C86 or whatever it is, and then like sort of Smiths, and then Manchester grunge, all those different things coming along, uh, as well as the whole electronic stuff and acid. But it did, did feel, like the, things had changed considerably. It was just like coming out in 2011. It was like again another world completely. You felt that you were sort of swimming in treacle, trying to make stuff happen. Sort of, um, yeah, bananas.
Yeah, yeah. Am I right in thinking the song "Help Me Please" was kind of about that period?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I had to. I think we it originally came out on one of the Help um, records. I think it was I think the second one they did. Um, and obviously then as well, you're going right. Okay, well, can you do that one on Jules Holland? Yeah, yeah, of course. And you don't realise that you're going to go and do it, and actually, this is going to be quite a difficult thing to do, right? Not just to. It's always, we did Jules Holland on the first album. We went on and we did Tied Up to Tight and Hard to Beat, and you go on there. I think it might have been our first TV. It was quite early, and we had Foo Fighters over there, and they're all like tanned, completely relaxed. We do this all the time. We're super confident at what we do. We are master musicians, and we do this all the time. We're having a great time. We're going to nail this. And then you'd look at the other side, and there was Black Eyed Peas, and then Arcade Fire were like, and then we were just there, and we were just like shitting ourselves, like going right. And then Jules Holland's like, and it's hard F1. Cut, it's hard Fi. Jules. Oh, right, okay.
did
And
they
then when
actually
you see
say
like on the
that?
view, there's some YouTube videos of us doing it, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, they're all on coke. They're all off their heads on coke." We weren't. We were just shit it with her, just like terrified, like go. So you're doing that, and then it's like, okay, do that, do that. But this time, by the way, you're going to be singing a song that you wrote about, losing your mum, and it's just like, fuck. It's just. And by the way, don't fuck up because it's a big TV thing. It's like, yeah,
That's mad. I
all
mean,
good
he
fun.
did, you know, yeah, you think he did incredibly well to like navigate through that. by the looks of it. But yeah,
Yeah, it's just. I mean, I'm not. We were. It's like I was saying about the Asbo stuff earlier. You take those things. You've got to take them. Um, it's only really in retrospect looking at it, you're going bloody hell. That was kind of a you know. Would we have done anything differently? Probably not. But yeah, it was kind of mad.
yeah, yeah. And then I saw you say, second album comes out, goes straight to number one, but some of the criticism still gets to you, kind of thing. Was that the feeling at the time?
Yeah, I think, as I say, because there was that feeling of like because of like the way making it was hard. It and what the sort of what I put into it and what I thought of it as with everything that had happened. Um, and also it was just kind of like, I mean, sometimes you're sitting there and you're kind of like you're going, well, like you're criticizing us for this, and you look at, well, what are you into then? And you look at what they're into, and go, well, this is just fucking the same old shit over and over again. It's just like, um, but it's just not, now it's like, what, it's just not worth getting into. You just got to I mean, the old Rick Rubin book, the Creative Act book, is a good one for that, because there are so many things that you cannot take into account. Like, so for instance, our Stars CTV goes to number one. A week later, Arctic Monkeys come out. You could have your single that you've been spent 2 years crafting and making perfect, and everything's ready to go, and the week you drop it, Elvis comes back from the dead. Right, like, you can just all your, there's nothing you can do about this stuff, right? And the only thing you can do is write music that revs your jets, and you enjoy the process. And you've got to enjoy the process of making it, because if you don't enjoy that, why are you doing it, right? And so if you start getting bogged down in all the other shit that comes after it, whatever people think about it, um, it's just a waste of energy, because there's nothing you can do about it. The people are going to say what they want, right? So, um, but at the time, I think I was so just kind of like knackered, emotionally and physically shattered, that it was like, fuck you, fuck you, you cunts. It was just, but but yeah, I mean, just yeah, it was just, again, some of it. You think, well, it's not particularly. Some of the criticism we got wasn't particularly fair. And like I say, that first live review sort of set the tone. Your fans are chumps, and you guys are fucking dickheads. Basically, it was like, we didn't meant, And the guy was saying, yeah, they actually, the crowd was jumping around and they all seemed to like it. It was like, well, you literally just come down here to do a hit job. Why fucking bother? Um, you know.
No, fair play. Yeah. Did you ever meet Rick Rubin then after like he bigged you up early on?
No, no, it's one of those guys I've always wanted to, um, would love to sit down and chat with. Well, I feel like I have now, after seeing him giving his little occasional wisdoms on Instagram. Um, I think I don't know whether he would have, if he'd have said, I'd produce you, I don't know whether his style of production would have worked for us. Maybe. When we went in with Mick Jones in Contempo, Mick Jones had that kind of, I'm going to get you in a room, I'm going to just create the right atmosphere, and you're going to make this record. And at that time, that was the wrong thing for us, really, because we didn't know what we were doing. We were quite young. We needed a bit of more of a guiding hand. And then later on, from off the back of that, where I became more confident doing my own thing, it might have been good to have someone like that to go, well, you know what you're doing, just I'm going to make it so it's a great vibe. Um, so possibly, Rick Rubin, I think he's the sort of guy who comes in and sets the vibe, and then kind of leaves you to it, I think. We would have probably been thinking, Well, what's he doing then? Well, how much are we paying him? Where is he? But it'd be cool to sort of you know, sit down and chat to him and pick his brains. Seems quite an interesting cat.
Yeah. Could you imagine him in the cab office?
I don't know, man. Doesn't seem very California, does it?
No, I heard he was like recording with the Strokes on like a cliff face a couple of years ago. Sounds mental, but um, then yeah, I guess from there you released the album in 2011. Was that a similar setup with the label still?
Yep. So that was again through Atlantic. Um, I remember it was a classic actually because it was the usual. Oh, guys. Um, so I was getting married, and I had my stag do, and they were like, "Oh, would love to do a photo shoot, guys. Love to do a photo shoot. Only thing is, the only day we can do happens to be your stag do." And like this was on the back of like every time I did anything that wasn't like involved, like book a holiday. Can you cancel it? Oh, can you come back early and do this, that, and the other? Blah blah blah. So as my stag do, they were like, "Look, we've got to get this photo shoot done. Could you do it in the morning?" I tell you to do it in the morning, and we will send you a couple of boxes of champagne for the stag do. I was like, all right, come on then, let's do it. So we did the photo shoot. They never used the photos, and they never sent the champagne. And that kind of summed up the last days of our relationship with Atlantic for me. But to be fair to them, they got in, they spent money on the record. As I say, I went to Los Angeles, worked with Greg Kirsten, worked with Stuart Price, which is really, really cool. Working with him, he sort of really got where I was coming from. I used to be into he had that thing, Les Rhythm Digital. Did you remember that? It was
Okay.
basically him pretending to be French when French House was in. So we used to talk about old golf, Mark One golfs and shit like that. So they were spending money on it, and I enjoyed doing it. But when you come out with stuff, and we were sitting there trying to kind of take quite a sort of a almost a slightly same approach as Big Audio Dynamite, where they've got sort of like kind of rock and roll riffs, but against electronics and bits and pieces like that. And you're coming out with that sort of thing, and yet we came out and everyone was doing sort of Bombay Bicycle Club, Foals, middle class intellectual indie. So it was kind of not what we were about. But it was quite cool going out to the States and doing all that sort of stuff, recording over there and sort of hanging out there for a bit. I spent a month in San Francisco with Dan the Automator. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. I was there for a month on my own. But yeah, that was kind of cool hanging out there.
Yeah, did you play? When I was talking to Black Wire, they said you played a gig with them in San Francisco, I think. Which is quite a, yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
wouldn't have expected, I guess, but just a
no.
random memory there. And then did you go into like a greatest hits from that point? Did you know it's kind of coming into an end or something?
I think that so basically we got to the stage where we'd got Atlantic had turned around and said, "Look, if we were to make the next album, we'd have to give you £500,000, and we're not going to." It was just, I was like, yeah, fair enough. So we didn't have a record label, and but we had our studio, and I was like, well, to be honest with you, it got to the point, with the label that it just felt that we were always arguing with them. You know, when we made the first record, we had this amazing team, and the people there. We just got lucky with the people who were there. They really got what we were about. For instance, the product manager, the guy there, he was a Wolverhampton Wanderers fan, and he just kind of got the whole where we were coming from. And we had the woman who was our radio plugger and our TV plugger. She was from sort of round our way, and we were friends with her, and they were like, "Oh, we don't want to pay her anymore with different press company." Everything had sort of changed, and a lot of the people there, there was a lot of kind of hipsters from Shoreditch. They just didn't get where we were coming from. We didn't understand them, they didn't understand us. Um, and so it's like, well, you know what? It's all right. We've got our studio. We can make music, you know. And then, but obviously we didn't have any money. So Ross, our guitarist, was like just had his first kid, and he's like, I can't not have money. I've got to leave and and find some work. So he did that. And I was like, well, we'll find another guitarist. And it just became apparent to me. I was sitting there like working on tunes, and I could hear the other two. They were sort of like going, well, you know, Steve had, you know, since he was 17, had been trying to get into bands and that kind of stuff. He was kind of like, I would quite like to go to university and do a degree. And it was like, well, you know what, why don't we just fucking get out of here and just, um, you know, stop it for a bit and people can go and do what they want to do and then we'll see where we're at. And then we'd sort of done that. And then it's like, well, do you want to do this best of? And it's like, well, you know what, fuck it, why not? We'll do it and we'll do a couple of shows. I was a little bit, do we really want to be doing that? But it was just at that time, that had been about a year since we'd sort of like paused. It was like, that's be a nice thing to do. So we all got together and did that. Um, but again, you know, it was a kind of reminded me. I spent the sleeve of the best of. I painted the studio wall yellow. I found an old camera, took it down, sprayed it black. Like there was a deadline for the shot, and we spent all night with a friend of mine who's a photographer, lighting it, hanging it up with bits of fucking fishing wire to take the photo. To get the photo, like so, I'm sitting there doing the photo for the sleeve of this album by Warner Brothers. And I said to them, "Oh, look, can I have 200 quid to give to the photographer and to pay for the paint?" And they just never sent it. And there was just little things like that that were like, "You're taking the piss here. I've just done this thing that would have cost you about 5 grand if you'd have got someone else to do it, and then you can't even be asked us to pay for, you know." It's just sort of like, so I was like, "Oh, fuck you, not doing this anymore." So yeah, that was that.
And then from that point, were you kind of still involved in music with projects and stuff?
I did. I was doing. So I still had the studio, and I did some writing with a few people, produced some bands, and so doing some of that. I had my son was born in 2015, so I kind of that took up a lot of my time. And then this sort of so as well as doing a few things like that, and I ended up doing this project called Offworld, which was Wolsey White, who I've been working with for ages. And I've been hanging out with another guy from around our way called Smiley Barnard, who's a drummer. And he played with Strummer in the Mescaleros for a bit. He's played with everyone. He's out with Archive at the moment. He played with The Alarm, Lily Allen, Robbie Williams. I mean, you know. And so he's this great drummer, and he knew this guy called Dale Davis, who played bass with Amy Winehouse. So I've got this great bass player in. And we started just jamming and coming up with ideas. And then there was this woman called Kristen Cummings who had done some backing vocals for Hardfire live and on the last record. And we got on really well. So we got her in, and we got this album together that we thought was great. I still think it's great. And we thought, well, we'll put it out ourselves, and basically put it out just as the pandemic started. So that kind of ended up on the shelf. But one day it'll come out because I'm still think it's really good, and because the people involved, and it was so different to Hardfire. It was much more, you know, in a room just playing for an hour and then going, oh, that's cool, and chopping these bits out, you know, much more kind of jammed out sort of stuff. It wasn't all on me. And you know, Kristen was like, she came over to the UK aged about 21. She's from America, and she was I think she was Mimi in Rent when it came over here in the West End. She got nominated for an Olivier Award. So she's an incredible performer and a singer. And she just got hooked up with some guy, stayed here and started doing top lines for house tracks and all sorts of different stuff. So yeah, it was really, really cool. We did some gigs, played with the Specials, one of their last shows. But yeah, it all kind of got fucked up by the pandemic. And then during lockdown, so one of the last things we did with that, because Kristen got stuck because she couldn't fly back to the States, we did a kind of a live stream from this place here, my little studio, for the Royal Albert Hall, and then we did another one in the garden, and then Kristen went, and I thought, well, I haven't got anything else to do. I'll live stream. I'll do the whole of Stars of CCTV acoustic, and I did that, and it was really the response to that, which was kind of a lot more than I imagined, and a real kind of warmth and genuine love from people watching. That was like, no, bloody hell, maybe we should do something. Maybe do a gig. So we kind of, when things sort of got rolling again, I phoned up our tour agent and said, "What do you think? What do you think?" And so we put on the forum, the HMV forum in Kentish Town, and it sold out in 10 minutes. And it was like, wow, this is pretty exciting. And that was kind of one of the reasons for getting back out there, and then getting in the room with the guys. There was just none of the sort of old tensions and old kind of gripes that we might have had with each other. It was just like, yeah, this is cool, this is fun. We're just making some noise and having a laugh. And that was kind of one of the reasons for sort of, for doing it again.
Yeah, yeah. And then you release an EP, and that's now, turning into a new album. Does that all feel pretty organic at this point?
Yeah, I mean, as well, like with the album, because I was quite into the idea, like that, there are sometimes after our sort of experience of making albums, where it becomes this thing that's almost like a millstone around your neck, like it's got to be this moment. It's like the album. It's like a slab of stone you've been carving into something, and it's like got to stand the test of time and do all this sort of stuff, and it becomes this immense thing. I was quite into the idea of going, well, fuck that. Let's do EPs, write some music, get it out, get inspired, write some more, get it out, and not have the whole, rigmarole of like, what's it going to be called? What does it mean? What are you saying? What's going on? And but then you kind of people go, well, you know what? The thing is, even though the world has changed with streaming and stuff, people still kind of want an album, especially from bands. They want to, if you want someone to write about it or mention it play on the radio, you still need an album. So I was like, okay, well, let's make an album, but let's try and keep some of the freedom that we were loving about not having to. So let's just not think about, have we got singles? Let's not think about, it's got to sound like a hardcore record. Let's not think about any of that. Let's just try and enjoy making some music, which is kind of how it was in the first place. The songs that became Stars of CCTV were quite disparate in many ways in my head, but Better to Better, I thought this could be a girl group song for, a girl pop band or something like that. It was this different sorts of stuff, and it just came together, and then the band played it, Wolsey mixed it, I sing on it, and it suddenly sounds like this coherent whole, right? So, so it's like, let's just make some music and not get, completely pushed down into trying to do the impossible, which is second guess what might get on the radio or what people might run out and buy. You can't get into that. Just enjoy making music that makes you happy.
Yeah, yeah. And how does it work? Do you put it out yourself type thing, or you get distribution or something?
So we looked around at a few different ideas, and then V2 Records got in touch. So it's there. So V2 are putting it out. So we parted ways with our old manager, and so when we did the show at the HMV Forum, Kentish Town, we didn't. It was just us doing it. We didn't have a management or anything like that. So we were kind of looking around, and when I'd put out the Off-World record or attempted to put it out, I got this a woman called Lorraine Long who was recommended to me to do the PR, and so she did that. And then the whole idea when we put the Hardfi show out, we literally just put posters of the camera in 4 tube stations, north, south, east, west, London, and then with the date, and that was it. Didn't have the band name, just the camera, London, 1st of October. And then people started taking photos of it, and it sort of spread virally. And so the press were trying to find out about it, and she was the last known person to have had anything to do with me, so they were getting in touch with her. She was like said, "Oh, I'll do it. I'll do it for free." And then she said, "Oh, I also do this Stand Up to Cancer show. Would you guys be prepared to do that?" So I said, "Well, of course." And then I said, "Would you want to manage the band? Because she seemed really switched on, really cool." And to her credit, I think most blokes would have gone, "Yeah, yeah, all right." But she was like, "Well, you know what? I really would like to do this, but I don't think I've got enough experience in that world, so I'd want to do it with someone else." So she introduced us to some different companies that she'd worked with and thought we were good. And one of those was Ignition, which is like Oasis's management company. One of the guys there had been our drum tech back in the day, so I was like, "Oh, this feels good." And we met the main guys there, so they became our management team, and obviously they've got Ignition records there as well. So we were lucky in that they were very happy for us to work as if it might come out on Ignition Records and we can use that thing. But then when V2 came in and we're really up for it, and we were like, "Okay, well, let's do that." And so we were really lucky to have their setup. V2 come in, but it's our record. We've made it, so V2 can have it for a little while, see what they can do with it, and then we get it back,
Yes.
which is
Then
a
it,
nice place to be in.
no, definitely. And with, going back to the article you did or the interview you did with Luke from the Coops, like, seems to be like a fresh wave of interest in some of these bands like yourselves. Is that what it feels like?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously, everyone. I think there's a lot of bands out there like praying that they'll have some kind of random TikTok moment, um, because that does seem to be, and like one of the ways of like getting yourself in front of a younger audience. There's no TV shows anymore. There's no real publications. How do you get yourself out there? And we're lucky that we've got fans. So a lot of it is like almost going back to the old days of going, okay, like get out, do some festivals, get out in front of people. What's nice though is that there doesn't seem to be that sort of ageist thing of like, "You're too old to be doing this." People are just, do they like it or not? We've got to that point where you can discover new music that actually came out 40 years ago or whatever, but it's new to you. Like when you used to go to the second-hand record shop and you'd find an album that you'd never heard of, and oh wow, this is really cool, and get into it. So it does feel like you can be out there doing your thing, and people find you. It's just letting people find you. I remember it was my next door neighbour was having some work done, and there were some guys out, the builders, working, and like they saw me and were like, oh, they were all into the band, but all they listened to all day was like Magic FM. I was like, how are we ever going to let these guys know? They don't read the NME. They don't listen to Radio X or Radio 1 evening show or whatever. How are we ever going to let them know that we are putting a new record out or putting a new, doing a show? Because like, how do you reach those guys? And there's still an element of that, really. How do you let people know when there's so much noise out there that you're doing stuff? I think a lot of it is, if you can, word of mouth is still the best promotion there is. If your mate says to you, "Have you heard this? It's wicked," you're much more likely to check it out than, if you perhaps read a review about it or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
No, it definitely feels better than just hearing it on a Spotify playlist or something. But I guess that's maybe the new.
Yeah. But then
Don't
again,
know.
let's say you get on the New Music Friday playlist and you're 48th out of 50. Who listens down, who listens down to 48 and is still paying any attention? It's kind of you're just background noise, aren't you? Really, that's you know
Yeah, I
maybe
know what you mean. Like, I make a real effort to listen to, is it Release Radar?
yeah,
But you can be a bit of a slog sometimes.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah. But yeah, I did want to talk about the video you put out yesterday as well, like the song that you've put out from the album, and like how your 10-year-old son has basically played a big part in that.
yeah. It was almost actually suggesting that he ought to be on this. He was saying, "Well, what are you doing?" And they're going to, because so um, obviously I was talking about how we wanted to make a new album and not have any of the bullshit previously, but in classic, uh, you know, record industry fashion. We had the album together, pretty pleased with it. And then, they came back to us and said, "Oh, do you know what we could do with? We could do with one more hard-fi banger." I was like, "Yeah, no problem at all. I'll just pluck that one out of thin air because I didn't think that's what you'd want. I didn't think you'd want a hard-fi banger. So what do you want? Cash to beat for the weekend? Something like that?" I was like, "Fucking hell." So I was like, "Okay, well, let's see what we got." So I got together some tracks I had, and whilst I was doing that, to sort of go, "Okay, which ones of these might work?" Um, my son's really into computers and stuff like that, and I'd given him my old little. I had a little computer I used to use in here that I was did loads of the ideas in back in. This was back, we back in 2014 when we were thinking about making a fourth album, um, and loads of those ideas I'd kind of forgotten about. Just gave it to him to muck about on, and he comes in and he basically said, "Ever listen to this?" And he gave me a little, USB stick. So I was like, "Oh, here we go. I ain't got time for this really." So I put it in, and he basically found these two tunes on there. One of them was called "All the Money's Gone," and it was an instrumental because I wanted to see if I could come up with a new melody for it or some new words. And so he'd taken that instrumental, that track, and he'd found this other track called "They Ain't Your Friends," and he'd somehow separated the vocals off. I don't know how he did it, but he'd separated the vocals off, and he put them on the other one. So "All the Money's Gone" was faster than "They Ain't Your Friends," but they were in the same key, so they worked, but it was like a chaos while they were out of time. And then every now and again they'd go in time for a little bit and then go out of time again. And when it went in time, it was like, "Oh, that sounds pretty cool actually." So I got him in and I sat down and I pulled all the bits over from one song to the other, put them in time, just lined them up as they were. I didn't go, right, that needs to go here. It's just like, "Okay, well, that's how it all run out." And it sounded pretty cool. So I thought, fuck it, I'll send it over with the other ones. And they all loved it. And we didn't touch it. It was like, right, didn't re-record the vocals, demo vocal. It's like, you know what? If we try and fix this like we would have done in the past, we're going to fuck it up. We're going to try and make it too perfect. So we literally tidied a couple of little bits up, which were just, where I just stopped and hit stop, and it was a clunk or whatever, and that was it. And we mixed it, and everyone loved it. So it's like, well, that's great because he's just completely got me out of a hole here. Found something, pulled something, like found a tenner down the back of the sofa, basically.
That's it. So I hope he's got a songwriting credit.
He has, yeah. He keeps asking me when he's going to get any money and what his cut is and when anyone's going to start paying any attention to it. It's like, you are so jammy. The first thing you do, you end up being on a record. And I said, "Do you want to do some more stuff?" He's like, "No, I've done that now. I think I'll do something else."
Shout out to him. All right, well, cheers for your time, mate. We'll finish on some fan questions.
Okay.
Um, got Ice MC on Instagram. Did you know the 2005 ad on French TV that said your GF's already in love with the singer? Does that make any sense to you?
No.
We'll move on from that. Got a few from Jade Woolgar, but we'll go with what is the favorite song? What is your favorite song that you've written?
Um, I think favorite hard fight song might be "Move On Now." It's quite simple, but it still resonates with me. It's still kind of I still remember writing it, sat where I was sat writing it, what I was looking at. I still that sort of comes back, and um, so that's could be one of my favorite. Some of them, there's a couple of the off-world tunes which I really, really like. I don't know if I still think perhaps "Move On Now" is the one, but yeah, I think yeah, Move On Now, definitely.
Yeah, I put that in my notes as a good one, to be fair. Um, James Allen comedy, another advert one for some reason. Does he remember the Carling advert that used "Living for the Weekend"?
Yeah, yeah.
Did you get a lot of stuff like that, or how did it work?
We got bits and pieces. I remember Argos wanted to give us 50 grand, and we said no. Bite their hand off now. We said no, I'm not going to an Argos ad. Um, yeah, but that was good. That Carling ad, it was cool. It was cool. Um, I don't think we ever got any Carling out of it actually, which was, I was expected to send a few crates over, probably just as well. Um,
Paddy Birrell 07 says, "Are you excited to be playing in the Wirral in July?"
Always excited to be. Is it in the Wirral or on the Wirral?
Yeah, it's on the Wirral, isn't it, usually,
Yeah.
but he's not put it like that. But
Well, maybe he knows. Yeah, no, just quite excited to be out playing again. Really, we did a few bits last year, we're doing some stuff. I'd still like to be doing more, but um, we'll take it as it comes. So just excited to be back out playing. Be good to do some new songs as well. Obviously, we're still going to play. We still love playing, the ones everyone knows. But it's good to be able to mix it up with some new stuff as well and figure out how we're going to do it.
yeah, I'm coming to see what the Leeds gig with Sunshine Underground, I think.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
So
great.
looking forward to that. We got here. J Bell 87 says, "Any plans to go on Cameo?" I don't know if that's an inside joke or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know if I can follow in Farage's footsteps.
And then one last one on Instagram, Tate Mag. Why no CCTV 20-year tour?
Uh, you know what? That was a bit of a fuck up because that was kind of the idea. We wanted to do that. We did some bits and pieces. Obviously, we did. I think it was that we ended up. It was kind of the timing was all messed up. We did the Roundhouse at the end of 2024, and it was like, and we'd done a tour that year. We'd done a tour the year before that, and the year before that we'd done two or three shows. We'd done that Forum show, and we played Neighbourhood up in Manchester and some other bits and pieces. And it felt like if we put another tour on the following year, you know, there's only so many times you can expect people to come and see you, especially when money's tight. So the timing just didn't work out really. Oh, well, that was always my, the sort of idea was like, well, you know what, we got 2025, 20 years of stars of CCTV, let's put the album, reissue the album, do a tour, work back from there. And it just didn't work back from there very well, really. Um, so yeah, that was just a bit of a fuck up, basically. Um, so yeah, sorry, but yeah, if you come to the new shows, we're still going to be playing pretty much. We play most of the stars of CCTV, and actually we did a couple of dates at what's now called Circuit in Kingston, where a lot of people go and they play an album launch, and we did the whole album, and I think we played Unnecessary Trouble for the first time in about 15 years, and that was great. It sounded great, so we might do that again. Get that out, dust it off.
Yes. Then a couple on Twitter to finish on. One from CC. What are his thoughts on Stains upon Thames? I've always liked it personally. I assume you do if you live in there. But...
Yeah, well, as in the town or the name change,
Oh, right.
because obviously the name change was slightly controversial because it was just Staines, and then they changed it to Stains upon Thames because they thought it might. Well, I think the excuse was that Ali G had made it a laughing stock,
Mm.
and it's like, well, it's been called Staines for like 1,500 years, right? So you're suddenly going to change it because Ali G's done but it was really just that they thought if we change it to Staines upon Thames, we might better put our property prices
Mm.
up. So yeah, that was just a bit of a bit shit really, but it's all right. It's all right, It's a little bit. The weird thing is that there's actually when Stars of CCTV came out, there was more going on. I was singing about being bored, and I was, but there was more going on now. There's no loads of the pubs are closed, all the nightclubs have gone. Well, there's only two, but they've both gone. But there's some couple of people have like opened up. There's a little microbrewery. They're trying to put on some music there. Another venue that's opened up, trying to put some music on. Um, there's a few interesting kind of Asian restaurants opened up. It's a bit different, so it's all right.
Yeah, yeah.
Like a lot of places, the high street's kind of suffering. A lot of shops closing. Just seen that another one's closed, and they're opening up a pawn shop, which kind of says all you need to know about the state of affairs. Um,
Mm.
but
Pawn shops and betting shops, isn't
yeah, yeah, and a bingo hall where the bank used to
it?
be. So for 24-hour gambling, apparently, must better get a late
Christ.
drink.
Then Brian Droll on Twitter says, what was Scarlett Johansson's favorite Hardfire song? Because there was some weird rumor back in the day about you two or
Yeah,
something.
I was very disappointed to know that it was uh, only a rumor to learn. Um, it's funny actually because obviously at the moment there's a court case going on, isn't there, about like phone hacking with the Daily Mail and that kind of stuff. And we sometimes we think, how on earth did this rumor come about? And because basically we're on tour in the States, and our press guy gets a phone call from the Daily Mail saying, we know that Richard's been having a relationship with Scarlett Johansson. They stayed together over Christmas. You know, what do you want to tell us about it? And he calls me. He says, "What's all this?" And I have no idea what you're talking about. It's absolute nonsense. And they got back and told them that. And then the following week, they ran this story anyway. And it wasn't, it was kind of funny. And hey, wouldn't it be great to have been, hanging out with Scarlett Johansson? She's a very talented, beautiful woman. But someone I was seeing at the time got very upset about it, and rightly so. Like what the hell's going on? And then the next week they run an article saying, I made it all up and it was me. I was a fantasist and made me look like a complete dick. I'm like, and the only thing we can think about is that a friend of mine left a message on my phone when we did 3 dates at the Astoria in December, and she said, "Oh, Scarlett Johansson's in town. She was doing a film with Woody Allen. Is she coming to the gig?" Like in a jokey manner, like and it's like. That was the only kind of weird thing that we could think. Is like, okay, we were number one the following week, number one in the charts. Why don't you hack their voicemail, see if there's anything on there? That's the only way we think that
That
they could
must be
have
what
come up with
happened then,
that.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
That's mad. Might be able to get some compo for
come on.
that. All right, mate. Then just finish on a couple that I sent you. In terms of is there a high point? But I mean, you do play Glastonbury in the end, didn't you? Was that quite a cathartic experience?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we played it this year. We did play it, previously, but we were always. That was funny enough. They never sort of asked us. They've never asked us back to one of the main stages. We played Billy Bragg's tent, Left Foot's tent a couple of times. Both amazing. It's still great experiences, still rocking. But and then we went back and did the Avalon stage this year, which again is kind of a sort of separate stage to the rest of it. But it was great. It was a bit of a nightmare for us. We literally got there. We were late getting there. They wouldn't let us in for 2 hours. So we literally got off the out of the van, did the gig, got back on the van, went home again. Um, so we didn't really experience the whole Glastonbury thing. Did smell of piss though. Did get that.
Fair play. And is like, I don't know, is there a standout high point or is there anything that sticks out that you do differently? I suppose we covered quite a lot of it really, but
Yeah, I think the high point probably those Brixton shows
yeah, yeah.
was being up there with Billy, Mick, and Paul, and at Brixton Academy, which has always been for me was always like that, the pinnacle, of like all the good cool bands played Brixton Academy. So if we could go and do that, that was where it's at. So
And
to
you're
go
getting
there,
back there, yeah?
yeah, yeah, in December. So that's going to be. We were actually booked to go back there 2 years ago, but obviously it closed, so we moved. Um, but yeah, I'm looking forward to that. It'll be really really cool to be back after all this time.
Yeah, yeah. And then anything you do differently?
I think just like we've said before, just lighten up, look round, just enjoy the ride a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Okay,
but
so then the album's out in summer, yeah?
yeah, album's out June 19th, I think. So so yeah, it's another slightly strange thing in that the last time we put an album out, or singles out, it was completely different to how you put stuff out now. It would always be you'd do all this stuff before it came out, and now it comes out, and then you start doing stuff. So it's all been a bit weird. We've been sitting there going, well, nothing's happening. What's going on? Oh, no, 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 don't worry. Wait till it comes out. So, but I'm really, really excited to hear, hopefully, what, people hear it and hopefully they dig it. And just thinking, well, let's get on to the next one. Again, I've always liked, you've got all this stuff in here. I've always loved tinkering with, instruments and equipment and stuff. So, um, yeah, just kind of think about getting out there, enjoying that side, and then get back on and do some more writing.
Yes. Okay, mate. Well, cheers for that. And
No, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
I look forward to seeing you in Leeds. Yeah.
Yeah, cool,
All
cool.
right. Cheers, Rich. I'll get that out. Yeah, ASAP. I'll let the is it Ant? I'll let Ant know what's going on there.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant. I was
But,
trying to think if I had any funny Noel and Liam stories, but I don't really. I met,
oh, yeah, missed that one out. Yeah.
yeah, I
Did you
don't
meet
think
him? Yeah.
I met Liam at the Q Awards, and he was very nice, very complimentary. And we just met Noel a couple of times on Soccer AM, and he can't take a penalty.
How did you get on with the pens?
I got a hat trick actually.
Wow,
I was
fair
all right
play.
with I was all right with the penalties when they changed to the top bins thing. That was all over for me. But in the penalties, I can kick it straight. But when it was like get it over there, forget about it. Um, I was always kind of like left back in the changing room in the old school footy team. So yeah, but it's a
It's a
shame
shame
that's
that's gone
gone.
off. That was quite useful for bands, wasn't it? Just
Yeah,
Aquarium. They were quite
yeah.
promote, like quite good for new bands.
I don't know why. Well, maybe it's run its course, but football's as popular as it ever was. I don't know why they wouldn't keep it going. It's just,
Yeah,
you know,
it seems to go more down like like the YouTuber route or whatever.
yeah,
I don't know why.
yeah,
Bring it back, I reckon.
yeah, yeah. Although it was an early start, which is never a good thing. You know.
No, fair. You must be happy with, and you brought out a Brentford shirt, didn't you, recently or something?
Yeah, yeah, that was amazing. That was really cool. And they're doing all right, which everyone was slightly worried about. Um,
Yeah, I saw the thing on the scoreboard the other day saying it looked like with all the predictions for you to go down or whatever.
yeah, yeah. Are you a Leeds fan since you're being Leeds, or are you
No, sorry, I'm from Hull originally.
right?
Um, but very, loosely these days. Had a great day at Brentford, like 99, 98, 99, where we won to stay up in Division Three. But I mean, you've done unbelievably well. I think people kind of forget like where you've come from, like the likes of you and Brighton.
Yeah,
It's pretty incredible.
yeah. I mean, it's been. I mean, I'm doing another uh, podcast about football stuff, and it's just going through, like thinking about you know games we've gone to back in the day and who they were against, and now where they're at now. It is amazing, and the fact that and that's the thing for us is like we can just stay in the league. That's a victory every season is just to stay in the league. I mean, you start going, oh, I used to quite enjoy the championship. It's so competitive, but um, yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And that
Yeah.
the two owners, the Brentford owner and Brighton owner, they both used to be. I think they used to be mates because they're from a similar background, using similar techniques. And then they fell out, but I think they're back friends again now. But they got that same ethos.
Right. Okay.
And I think Tony Bloom as well. I've heard this thing. It's like, if you want to get into the Champions League easily, buy a Scottish team because you get Champions League spots. So there's a thing of like, I think he's involved in one of them. And I heard a rumor that Matthew Benham was looking at getting into Dundee or someone like that. So
All right.
there you go. Anyway, too
It's
much
like
on my
you've seen
mind.
Succession.
Sorry,
Did you watch the program Succession?
I haven't yet. Is it worth it?
Yeah, it's quite funny because he buys hearts in that, or someone buys it for
Right.
him or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, how's Lewis Potter getting on anyway? He's
Yeah,
from
he's
Hull.
he's 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 struggled to get a sort of first team starting spot. Although last season, because we've always had an injury nightmare with fullbacks. So last season he was playing left back, and he was brilliant at it, almost too good at it because he kept being left back. He was like, and now he wasn't always starting, but now our left back's got injured again, so he's back at left back. So he'll probably be starting more. But it'd be nice to see him showing what he can do. You know, a bit more. Sometimes he struggles because he's not the biggest guy, is he? Um,
No, yeah.
but um, but
No,
yeah,
it's good because we felt he left a bit early, but so it's good to see him actually breaking in type of thing.
yeah, yeah. How are you feeling about Rosinho at Chelsea? Is it?
I can't really believe how it's he kind of overlooked the things at the beginning, but he's just like doubling down on his nonsense, isn't he? I don't really know why.
Have
It's
you,
the wheels are coming off now big time though, I think, aren't they?
yeah. Have you seen the Paddy Power ad they put out just to cut the day or two to go like the guy being Liam Rosinho in the office?
Like the man age and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. I want him to do well, but he's not helping himself, is he?
No, but yeah. Well, the whole thing's just mad, isn't it? The whole. I mean, again, how did Chelsea get away with everything they did? Oh, I'm not going to get into that because I'll stop, mate.
Yeah,
But,
exactly. Yeah,
but
when
yeah,
people are getting points
how
deductions
are
and
Hull
stuff.
doing at the moment?
Doing well, yeah, because we kind of got like we got got a two transfer window ban for like a late payment, and we've ended up like well in the playoffs at the minute. So pretty happy.
Yeah, good.
Got like a very enthusiastic owner from Turkey. They call him the Simon Cowell of Turkey, apparently. So, if we get in the Premier League, he's going to go mad in backers, I think. So, fingers crossed it can happen.
Yeah. Well, good luck.
But yeah. All right, mate. Well,
Hopefully, we'll see you there.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
All right, Rich. Take
yeah,
care.
cool, man. Appreciate that. Thank you. I'll see you in Leeds.
Nice one, mate.
Come
Yeah.
and say
Look
hi.
forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool,
Nice
man.
one. Cheers.
Take care. See you later. Bye.